continuing the conversation. AI automation is the buzzword of the day. Everyone's talking about job displacement, efficiency gains, and even the robotic revolution. But are we asking the right questions? Are we even looking at the chessboard from the right angle? Forget the hype, forget the fear mongering. Let's talk about what AI automation really means for the future of work, for leadership, and for us as humans in this rapidly evolving landscape. I'm really excited about this conversation today. And to help us navigate this, I'm thrilled to welcome back Rob, the CEO of CharmIQ. Rob, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I enjoy doing these.
Yes, me too. So, Rob, the Pew Research Center highlights that 52% of US workers express worry about AI's future impact in the workplace. And 1/3 think that the use of AI or AI automation will lead to fewer jobs for them in the long run. Conventional wisdom says we need to focus on reskilling and mitigate displacement. But is job displacement even the real story here? Are we missing a much larger, perhaps more uncomfortable truth about what AI automation is actually disrupting? What are your thoughts on this?
That is one big can of worms to open up. So I think we'll take this one in a couple of parts and, hit me with ones I'm missing.
Okay.
So I would say our standard answer today is, and I think everyone's answer should be, that, in the next couple of years, you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by somebody who's using AI.
Yeah.
And I think that's the progression that we're going to go through here over the next couple of years. Is people are more and more just going to start using it and finding massive efficiency gains just within what they do personally. Mm-hmm. You're going to find some tactical spots throughout your whole organization and your workflow where it's just going to slot in perfectly, and then all the way up the chain. So all the way up to the C-suite can use this for AI can help them think through planning and problems and come up with new ideas and all these things. So it's the entire stack. And I think that efficiencies are going to get just through the roof with all of this. And I think the folks that are going to get left behind are the ones who are most worried about it today, to be honest with you. It's all the folks that are worried that it's going to take their job. And there's always that paralysis that we go through when we start to worry. I'll just throw in a personal anecdote here, which is I grew up under a chronic worrier. My mother is a chronic worrier. And, I learned how to live life through worry. And it took me most of the way through college before I realized that it wasn't the worrying. And it took me through college to realize, like, hey, I don't actually worry. I was just worrying because it was something that was put upon me. And I learned as a skill, so to speak, and it didn't really help. So I always ask people, even to my mother to this day, I always say, if worrying is going to help this situation, then be the best worrier you can be. But if worrying is not like going to solve this problem, like if there are actual actions to be taken, then take those actions. Like the worry doesn't do anything for you other than prevent you from taking the actions that it is the thing that you're worried about. So worrying is the thing that's likely going to cause the thing that you don't want to have happen to happen.
Yeah, because you're thinking about it.
So I'm not saying, and it's hard. Believe me, I have gone through years of self-help trying to figure out how to stop worrying from a chronic worrying parent.
Yes.
And it ain't easy because once it's in there, it's hard to get back out. But I just encourage you to find those little bitty steps to just get comfortable. Think of it like a cold pool. You jump in and it's like really shocking, but you go kind of slow and you're like, oh, I can get used to this. This isn't so bad. And I would say the same thing's true with AI here is start something small, figure out where it can fit within your day. There's so many different tools, even if it's just for play right now, even if you use it to generate some fun images to send friends or something. You just get used to thinking about a world in which these things are available to you. Because I would say if there's a single disruption that I think we all need to contend with is a different way that we have to think about the world now. Mm-hmm. And I'll say one more thing here before I'll ask to reprompt me as to what the actual question was. But the most challenging thing every time something new comes out is your body's really efficient at doing the same thing. Like we are built for performing the same task over and over again, even if it's annoying and repetitive and boring. Like, we're built for it. So again, your body is designed to do the same thing. Your mental processes are designed to do the same thing over and over. And the hardest part about, I just had a dinner the other night with a fellow CTO, a buddy of mine, and his statement was is like, he hasn't really played with AI, and his statement was is like, it's just hard to like remember to try to insert it into something all the time. And my statement is always the reverse, which is try to insert it everywhere always, and you'll find where it doesn't fit. So it's one of those things, as I tell my developers, just literally write on a sticky note and put it on the side of your monitor, 2 big words that says try AI. And like every time you do a task, just go like, is there something else out there that might do it? And again, that's what you need. It's just this little bit and change in your process. The disruption is going to be to remember that these processes that we've been doing all of the times have something else. And I'll say one more thing, it just popped into my head, which is there's so many interesting things that we're so used to it being a human thing. So, for example, reading images or transcribing text or summarize, like all these things you're so used to like people doing. And I think that's one of the main reasons it's been really hard for people to try to switch or like once they start to switch, to not continue to switch, meaning switch to using things or trying to use things, is it's your brain is like, well, this is a human thing. Why would I try to get a machine to go do it? And again, you'll just find lots of little places where, again, things like image recognition and idea generation and stuff like that, you'd be surprised. So even in areas where you don't think, just spend your 2 seconds on Google or whatever you use to like say, hey, like, is there a tool here in this space to help me?
Right. Yeah. And I think you hit it. I think you're right. It was about disruption, right? The question really was about, is AI automation, is it actually disrupting, or is it I think, and what I'm hearing from you, it's not disrupting, it's assisting. It's for the human, right? To use it, to ask the question, is there a tool or is there a process in place that a machine could actually help me do my work faster, make me more efficient? So instead of, for me, a large part of my job at Yahoo when I was in global partnerships and business development, the big thing to me, I always ask people, what's your biggest time suck? Right. And people would say, oh, for me, it was, I really loathed the contract negotiation. I loved the negotiation itself, but I hated going through the red lines. And it took me hours and hours and hours to do it, to look at the original, to look at the red line, to look back and see like, what levers can I pull? And AI today helps me do my contract reviews and my contract negotiations much, much faster.
Even though we're still at the point where you shouldn't rely on them 100%, but the thing is that it's a cognitive assistant. It can help you help some of the things as you're going through it. And I think that's the best part, is it takes some of those cognitive loads off of you.
Yeah. I'm still a part of the process. But the process isn't taking me 3 hours. It's taking me 45 minutes, right? In terms of,
and it's definitely less painful.
Much less. I don't dread it anymore. I actually look forward to it. So businesses are laser focused on efficiency gains from AI automation and faster processes and lower cost and increased output. But is efficiency even the right metric that we should be looking at? And are we optimizing for the 20th century when we should be maybe aiming for something else entirely different? Maybe effectiveness or adaptability, or even yet something maybe we haven't defined. What's your take on what we should really be measuring when it comes to AI's impact in the workplace? Good, bad, or indifferent? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's again a bit to unpack there. That's what's nice about this series, is hopefully as folks watch these, just comment and let us know which are the things, if we miss one or two or something, just let us know. We do these things weekly. We're more than happy to pick up where we might have missed something. Or even if we didn't miss it and you want us to deep dive or whatever, please comment. We love feedback. So a lot to unpack, because, I would almost say those are almost mutually exclusive. So if there was one metric that I think companies need to start measuring, is adaptability. If you somehow think you're going to make it through this next revolution, the one that we're right in the middle of, and you're going to come out unscathed. I would, and if, let's put it this way, if you work in front of a computer, or if there is a computer that is somewhere in your process somewhere, and if you think you're going to come out of the backside of this thing unscathed, then that you're, yeah. So adaptability, especially with how quickly things are changing, I would say my biggest challenge as somebody in this space is the near daily changes that I have to deal with.
Mhm.
And as I mentioned earlier, I was talking with a buddy at dinner the other night, and I hadn't talked to him in over a year. And I was just trying to think before I met him, like, what can I talk about that's changed over that year? And I'm like, that's like 365 different things that I would talk about. Like, even since Monday, what should I talk to him about? So, and I also want to do the other side and say, like, hey, it's overwhelming. My usual thing: find your trusted sources, find a way to deal with this fire hose. But it's changing fast. So I think adaptability, in terms of leadership, if you don't have somewhere on your KPIs, if you don't have somewhere on your red, yellow, green, or your monthly, the way I always look at the world is basically yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily. And everything builds up through that. So if you don't have something in those strata today, now talking about that, I highly encourage you to do that. Is your Even if something today isn't going to potentially change, you should be thinking about what it means when it does. Because again, I don't think we're going to make through this without no one's not going to see change. So you have to start preparing for that. So you don't want to get broadsided with it. So again, put something in your list that helps you, even if today, the first thing that you do to help use AI is
Mhm.
go into ChatGPT or Charm, because we always have to plug that on our own channel here. Go into Charm and ask your dude, how do I measure adaptability of my business? Like, how should I think about adaptability in the context of AI? And what you're going to find, and this is again specifically why we built Charm, is you're going to need ChatGPT, for example. It doesn't have the context of who you are, or what your business is, or anything. So again, the reason we built Charm is so that you can add reference material, you can add all of this information, this contextual information that can actually help you with that problem. And if you already have a document that has, here's what my company is, and here's how it's structured and how it works, and you have that in your reference material, you just go in there and ask your dude, or you create a dude that's like, help me think about adaptability. Create a dude, and like on a daily basis, like, here's how we're doing. Like, how should we measure this? How should we think about adaptability? What does it mean? Again, in this weird space that we're in. So I went kind of long on that one, but again, I think the key metric that everyone has to start doing, which I don't think is on anybody's dashboard today. I have never, and I've worked in startups since my whole career for 30 years, and I've never seen adaptability as a metric on any of the KPIs. So again, if they're not there, you got to add it, because that's what's happening today. And then
Yes.
in terms of all of the other goo, in terms of efficiency and all of that other stuff, I would think get the adaptability done first. And as your adaptability goes up, you're going to see, because what supports that? What are the things that mean, like, as you're adapting? It's one thing to say that, yes, we're adapting, but is that driving other metrics? So which are your other metrics that are to do that? And is efficiency one of them? And I would just say what's going to be an interesting thing as we go through probably the next year or two is to start to see what falls out for people as they start to measure adaptability, and they start to see, as adaptability goes up, what other metrics trend with it. I think that's going to be a really fascinating thing to learn.
So adaptability and reskilling, right? Reskilling training workers for this new AI driven roles, right? Kind of starts there. It starts with the leadership. It starts with the leadership saying, hey, we need to adapt to this new technology, right? Just like the internet or just like computers, right? We're not typing in a typewriter, we're typing in a keyboard on a computer. So reskilling, training workers for this new AI driven roles. But sometimes I think about it as, are we just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, or should we be thinking less about reskilling for machines and more about rehumanizing the work that we're doing right now? And what kind of shifts in the workforce should develop, and what are truly needed to embrace this new amazing gift that smart humans and machines have given us, right? Because it is a gift in my view, in my
Yeah.
eyes. It's given me many gifts. But so, what kind of shifts in the workforce and development are truly needed to adapt and embrace this technology?
Yeah, so a bunch of great questions in there. So what's I always love to I when I think about a problem, I try to find the edges. Because once you can put a box around something, it's easier to deal with and to understand. And what I find a lot of people do is they just kind of jump into a thing, and but you don't know where that fits. Is that a little tiny piece of the box? Does that fill the entire box or whatever? So the first thing I always try to do is just feel out the edges.
Mhm.
And one of the things to do here is like, what's the, however you look at it, either best or worst case scenario, what could happen. The way that I like to think about AGI, the artificial generalized intelligence, is basically like the Turing test, which is, could you take a person, if I covered up my eyes and I put a machine where the person is, could I tell the difference? And
Right.
I mean that, and the whole point of the generalized, the G of the AGI, is it could, that could be for anything, right?
Mhm.
So it could be for speaking, for listening, for identifying, for thinking, for like everything. So when you say AGI, you mean effectively the equivalent of a person. And we can talk about robotics versus that, but we'll just talk about, again, imagine anything that somebody separated by a screen could do, and if I couldn't distinguish. So we're definitely getting to the point where you may not even be human right now. You could be generated and it would be hard to tell. And
Right.
again, so when you get to a world of AGI, and again, there's a non-zero chance that that could land. But again, all I'm trying to point out is, with the trillions of dollars and the millions of people that are currently working singularly on this task, it's non-zero on a daily basis now, on an
Hmm.
hourly, minutely basis, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Um, but again, the point is we're trying to get to the edge of the box. And when you look at this, and if I can literally replace a person on the other side of a machine with something equivalent, again, the edge of that box is, there's really no more reason for white collar work. Like, it goes away. And I'm not here to be a doomer. I'm not here to be anything else. I'm just saying, like, what's the worst case of this thing? AGI lands tomorrow. And yes, of course, it'll take time. But the point is that all of those jobs that we see today, effectively, you don't need anymore. Literally, the thing that we're doing now, again, with a generalized artificial intelligence, there's no reason for me to do this anymore. Again, it's indistinguishable, right? And then, of course, everyone gets in the little thing, well, but it can't do this and it can't do that. And again, I'm making the statement that if you say that AGI is the ability to replace a person behind the screen and make it indistinguishable, then it's indistinguishable, which means that
Right.
it could be doing what we're doing right now. By
Right.
definition, indistinguishable. So again, if you think of that world and we say that, then what does that mean? So again, in terms of like job loss and what does it mean? So again, find the edges of the box, and what, like, how many industries do you know that just exist as a step between multiple steps, that just simply exist because of previous inefficiencies that existed in one process, but now that process doesn't have them anymore, because again, you effectively can spawn up as many AGIs as you want and have them fill those gaps of that process. So again, like, that's the edge of this. Like, so in the worst case scenario, AGI drops tomorrow, and again, barring time that it takes for things to happen, a whole lot of people who sit in front of computers don't do that anymore.
Right.
And then what does that mean? Like, what do we do? And I would say it's the same answer as before the printing press came, and before the telephone came, and before the internet came, and before, like, I remember as a kid going with my mom and dad and my sister to a travel agency.
Yeah.
Everyone would get in the car, and mom would have a bunch of pamphlets in her hand, and we would go sit in an office, and the kids would go running around, and the parents would be talking about the trip, and they'd be planning it and printing out tickets and like all this other stuff. Like, that doesn't exist anymore. Sure, there's travel agents, but it's not what it was before, right? I
No.
don't get in the car, I don't go to a thing, I don't, unless I really, I need to. and
Right.
and
Right.
those exceptions are what's interesting, right? Like, there are still travel agents. Like, that's what people do now because they find value in it, or they want the human to human touch in these things. So I just use that as an example, but it's going to happen basically everywhere. And then what does that mean? Is it reskilling? What are people going to do? And this is where UBI, the universal basic income, comes in. Like, do people have money? And what does it mean? And like, it gets all crazy once you get past this moment. So I would say you can't focus too much there, in the same way that the day before Steve Jobs walked up with the iPhone, you can't guess what the heck's going to be on the other side of this thing. There's no way you could have guessed. That's
No.
literally the definition of one of these singularity events. So
Well,
I would say stop worrying about it. Like, we'll figure it all out. Like, the industry as a whole, there's enough people, good, bad, ugly, working towards it, against it, and so forth, that we all seem to work out fairly well after all of these things. So,
it's evolution, right? It's
yeah.
how we evolve, right? And
Which goes back to the adaptability, right? So if you're
yeah,
starting to practice adaptability today, you are going to be in a much better position when these things start to happen. And again, everything's not going to blow up in a single minute. You'll
no.
have a little bit of a head start on this stuff. And again, same answer here. The dude who's been adapting to the changes now is going to be better off before. So again, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose it to the person not doing it. So you're not going to be freaking out afterward, because you've been practicing like what's going to happen, and you're practicing adaptability and all this other stuff.
Yes. So, taking a leadership perspective, how does AI automation fundamentally change what it means to lead, right? So, machines are taking over routine tasks and even some cognitive functions. So, what's the new role of human leaders? And are we moving from managers to something else entirely, or facilitators, sense makers, even, and I think I've heard you say this before, chief meaning officers, right? Like, what's your take on leading in AI and automation and efficiencies?
Yeah, so that's interesting, because there's definitely a today and there's a once all this stuff goes down. I think I just kind of went through the when it goes down, we'll kind of figure that out as it goes. And yeah, it's going to be a whole lot of people that need human to human help. You're going to need a person with a hand and a warm hug kind of stuff going on through these things. But as for today, like, how does leadership change? And it's interesting. Um, again, I'm focused on metrics that I've never considered before, like adaptability. Like, I have to go poke all the people that I work with and say, hey, like, what new thing have you learned with AI today? Because even if you learned something yesterday, it's still changing.
Yes.
So those are leadership is totally different. And I would say it's conversations like we're having here, which are more human conversations than we would normally have. We would normally be focused on skills and all this stuff. And I think we got to get back to the human stuff, which is like, how you feeling? Like, how do you have anxiety with all this stuff? The political spectrum's going a little wonky, as it usually does this time of year after an election, as
Mm.
we go through a bunch of changes. So, like, how you feeling? Check in with your team, check in with everybody, like, provide that extra support. It may just be that the EQ is the new IQ. It may be that you're not hiring people because they're smart anymore. You may be hiring them because they're adaptable, because the people gravitate towards them. They feel more comfortable around them, because it may be that the smart part is covered by somebody else.
Right.
So we just might need the EQ folks helping it out. So again, that's not a thing that you would have potentially considered as a leader before this. Hire for fits, backfill with skill. And this is an interesting case where that fit is usually some kind of smarts. And now it's going to be more like, again, adaptability, human skills, thinking, learning, ability to cope with stress, meaning not like work's beating you up stress, like the hey, everything's changing kind of stress.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's so true. I remember when we rolled out our first like really complex CRM system at Yahoo, and I was part of that team. And I said this is going to be a big change for people. We bought everybody the book like Who Moved My Cheese, right? And it's a silly, simple book about some mice and some cheese. And how do you adapt to change? How do you adapt to technology? How do you adapt when you go from the typewriter to the computer, or from
Yeah.
the encyclopedia to the internet,
Yeah.
right? And it is about adaptability, and it is about change, and it is about really focusing on the things that make humans so amazing, which is empathy and a warm hug and a
Yeah.
smile and a question of how are you doing today, and having that connection of actually listening and remembering, right?
Yes.
Um, And those are the things, I always tell people the human aspect in AI, in this technology, is still very important. We're the
Yes.
managers of the machine. We're the ones
Yep.
that ask them the questions, and we're the ones that guide them and give them feedback or
Yep.
say, yeah, that was a really good idea, or that was a really good answer. Or, you know what? No, I don't agree with that. Or you
Yep.
missed something here. So
Yep.
our human interaction with the machine is still very, very an important part of the technology.
Yes.
So, Rob, this has been characteristically unconventional and thought provoking as usual. You've given us a lot to chew on in terms of the AI narrative and automation. And perhaps AI automation isn't just about job loss, right? You've said it several times. You're not going to lose your job to the machine. You're going to lose the job to the guy using the machine or the woman using the machine. But it's profound and it's given me a lot to think of and think about. And for everyone watching, I hope this conversation has challenged your assumptions and sparked some deeper thinking about AI's role in our professional lives. And let's move beyond the surface level anxieties and start grappling with the bigger, more fundamental shifts, really. So, for our viewers, links to CharmIQ will be below, as well as links to our previous conversations. We do this each week. We tackle different kind of timely things that are kind of out there. There's a million of them. So if you'd like to hear Rob's view or my view, our view on anything interesting that's kind of out there, let us know. And we'll include that in our topics for our next conversation. Thanks, Rob. See you
Thank
soon.
you, Chelene. See
Of
everybody.
course.